Hey, good morning. Welcome back to the Red Mic. Happy Juneteenth. Happy Friday. Hashtag Fun Friday. Before I get started, you'll notice I'm going a little bit later today. I've got the day off. It's a state holiday. It's a national holiday. My flag is flying outside. The other day, I had a personal day, and because of that, I slept in a little bit and I went a little bit later. I would like to express my deep appreciation and thanks to my interns and at least one person on our staff who were concerned because Red Mike Messages did not come on at its usual time. Usually it's the same bat time, same bat channel. Red Mike Messages has been on usually pretty regularly for the last few years around 7 a.m. But if I've got the day off or something going that morning, I might go earlier. I might go later. But I promise you, Monday through Friday, I'm going to go. But again, I want to thank my interns and the staff folks who they even said they were thinking about having a well check done on me. So I'm glad they didn't do that, but I was deeply, deeply touched. So let's jump into today's Red Mike message. My thoughts on Juneteenth. As I already said, today is Juneteenth, and most Americans around the U.S. know it as a relatively new federal holiday. But many Texans know that it started right here. On this day in 1865, Union troops arrived in Galveston, and they announced that the enslaved people in Texas were free. Now remember, Texas was in rebellion up until that point. But at that point, it was no longer in rebellion because the Union had come in and said, "We're taking back over, bud." Now, for generations, Black Texans commemorated that day. Long before Washington, D.C. recognized it, long before most of the country had heard of it, Texas made Juneteenth an official state holiday in 1980. 41 years later, the rest of the nation followed. Now, what makes that especially interesting to me is Texas was the last stop. It was the last Confederate state where emancipation was formally announced and enforced, the last place where the news arrived. And yet Texas became the place that everybody remembered. For more than a century, Texans observed Juneteenth while most of the country barely knew it existed. Now, in a strange twist of history, that means Texas ended up being first because it was last. Now, here's another historical detail that many people don't know, but some of my interns do because I quizzed them on it yesterday. They all failed horribly, but that's okay. Juneteenth did not immediately end slavery everywhere in America. Neither did the Emancipation Proclamation. The Emancipation Proclamation only applied to states in rebellion against the Union once the Union took over those states that had been formerly in rebellion. So, for example, it didn't apply to loyal border states that didn't secede, such as Kentucky and Delaware. And in fact, after Juneteenth, slavery technically remained legal in both states until the ratification of the 13th Amendment later that year. By the way, hats off to my intern, Andrew. Way to go, Andrew. He corrected me. I could not remember the 13th Amendment number to save my life. He jumped in. Smart kid, smart kid. More enslaved people actually remained in bondage in Kentucky after Juneteenth than were enslaved in Texas. Now, that doesn't diminish the importance of Juneteenth, but it does help explain it. Juneteenth marks the moment freedom was finally enforced in the last major Confederate territory where the Civil War had already settled the question. It represents the day the promise reached Texas. And because Texans kept remembering it, the nation eventually did too. Now, personally, I think it would be better to have a national holiday commemorating when the 13th Amendment was ratified. But you know what? We got Juneteenth. It's national. So bully for Texas, right? Now, the U.S., if you don't know this, the United States is one of the few nations, and arguably the largest one, to fight a major war in which slavery was the central issue and whose outcome directly ended slavery. What makes that story even more remarkable is that it was a civil war. Americans fighting Americans, neighbors against neighbors, in some cases, even relatives against relatives. I've said this before, I think. I think the Confederate States had a perfectly legal right to secede. They did not join what they thought was going to be a perpetual, unending union. The Civil War ended that notion, and then it was further solidified by Texas v. White. We could argue the merits, but it doesn't matter. It's pretty much settled law now. Secession's not legal. And the cost of the Civil War was staggering. When it ended, the institution that divided the nation ended with it. And a lot of people worry about being first in line, first to market, first to be recognized, first to succeed. But history is full of examples where being first mattered far less than what happened next. The student who struggles early sometimes becomes the strongest leader. I know a young lady who told my wife, she said, I was an okay student in high school, but it took college for me to really buckle down and figure out these are the techniques I need to use to be a success. And she's fantastic now. One of the smartest people I know, in fact. The business that enters a market late often learns from everybody else's mistakes. The person who starts late, they can still finish strong. Yes, Texas was last, but then Texas led. Those facts aren't contradictory. They're the story. Juneteenth survived because people kept showing up year after year, generation after generation, not because it was popular, not because it was national, but because they believed it mattered. I think it did too. That's true of holidays. That's true of families. That's true of organizations. It's true of principles. History is made by the people who show up. It's made by the people who remember. The things that endure are usually the things that somebody cared enough to preserve. So remember these things today on this hashtag Fun Friday, on this Juneteenth that I hope you go out and celebrate. Being last does not mean that you're finished. Persistence often matters more than position. Traditions survive because people choose to preserve them. Lasting influence frequently starts locally before it becomes a bigger deal. And sometimes the thing that makes you late is the very thing that prepares you to lead. Today is Juneteenth, a Texas tradition that became an American holiday. And that's today's Red Mike message. I hope you found it interesting. I appreciate you being here. Please give me a like, a follow, and a share. If you have anything you'd like to tell me about today's Red Mike message or any of the Red Mike messages, let me know down in the comments. Go out and have a great day. I'll see you again Monday. And until next time, don't forget, as always, life is short. Drink the bourbon.